Hello, thank you. I'll try to bring people in. Okay. The room is half empty, so I know today is sunny. And I understand you're not tired, are you? You're not tired. I mean, you're teachers. You know, just below Superman, we have teachers. So, I mean, you must not be tired. Okay, let's wait a few seconds until we get a bit more people so that we approach the end of today, almost the end of today, because we still have dinner tonight. That is going to be the peak of today. No, I'm kidding. So I think, are we live with the streaming, colleagues? Are we live with the streaming? Yes, we are. So welcome, everyone. Welcome to the colleagues who are watching this session online, the hundreds of thousands of people watching us online in the future. For the time being, they're probably 24. Okay, so given that you're not too tired, we are going to close this session with a few words from me. I'm Santi Shimeka. I'm running the Central Support Service. Before we start, I just wanted to say something about the fact that we have in the room the winners of the European Innovative Teaching Awards. There are 5 teachers who were invited to the eTwinning conference, and I would like them to stand up and wave, and then the other ones to give a round of applause. So please, the Innovative Teaching Awards winners, if they are in the room, can you please stand up? Here we go. Yes, we are at least 3 out of 5. And we have also that, sorry, okay, wonderful. 5 out of 5, wonderful, thank you. So these awards aims to value the work of teachers and educators by making use of innovative, interactive, and inclusive teaching and learning practices. I had to read it because it's a long one, but yes, you're doing a great job. So thank you for being here. And so before we go to the keynote today, a couple of words. First of all, as you know, this year has been the theme of the year has been citizenship education. We like to say it was active citizenship. And I think it's quite an important thing. Have we done enough? I'm not sure we've done enough. There is still a lot of things we can do. For instance, I was reading some survey in 1920, about 42% of eligible voters under 25 turned out to vote. In 2024, and we talked about the European Parliament, the turnout was 36%. So there was a drop between 19 and 20 and 24. So it looks like citizenship education is very much needed. But then I was thinking, maybe there is something different. Active citizenship is not only going to vote. If you think of the manifestations which took place in the past days and weeks for very good reasons, and there's so many young people going to the streets and manifest, maybe there is hope, there is active citizenship, and maybe actually done a good job. After all, maybe the problem is not the active citizenship, maybe it's the way the politics is interpreting or not interpreting the will of the young people. But that's in another conference, another discussion. We are not going into this, but I was actually reflecting on, active citizenship. Have we done a good job this year? I think we did a good job. Last year, as you remember, we were passing during the conference from the theme of the year, which was well-being, a wonderful theme, to citizenship education. And now, as you know, we are going through active citizenship or citizenship education to skills for life. So we officially and even dynamically going to launch the new theme of the year, which has been already sort of pre-launched in the past weeks, and even today have been workshops on this very theme. But Skills for Life is going to be the theme of next year. Actually, we're starting today, is going to be for an entire school year. Skills for Life is actually quite important. As we know, Skills for Life now include not only the usual basic skills, numeracy, literacy, and digital, but we also have something more, which is, apart from science, which is quite obvious, and we are quite lacking on this area. And actually, the deputy director yesterday was mentioning a few data about the lack of skills in this area. But one important element which was introduced, and I think is essential, is, believe it or not, citizenship. So this is becoming another basic skill or skill for life. I want to stress the for life element, which I think is important. In the past, skills were very much for the labor market. You need to be able to do things so that you can go out and get a job. Wonderful, wonderful. But skills are not only for getting a job. Actually, if you think of it, skills should be to be a good citizen, to be a human person, to be able to think and critical think, and to do something more than just working. And I think the skills for life is actually meant to mean exactly this. You need to acquire skills to become a human person, a person who can become a great citizen, and then participate in life and in democracy and in the labor market. So we all cherish the new theme, Skills for Life, and we are going to spend the whole year discussing about these topics. I was talking about, so we went from well-being as a theme last year to citizenship to basic skills, so skills for life, and well, all this actually has a wrap-up if you think of it, and this is called inclusive education. So that's the reason why we felt we should invite one of the most renowned experts in education, and so I'm so honored and excited to invite on stage Professor João Costa, who is at the moment Director of the European Agency for Special Needs and Inclusive Education. Among other things, he's been just in the spare time Minister of Education in Portugal. He's in, I don't know how many members, he's one of the best experts in education you can think of. So I'm very thrilled to have him on stage, and please welcome. So there will be a keynote, and then there will be some time for questions from the audience, from you, and from online. But the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I know that you've been having so much fun that I feel this burden of keeping everyone awake after all the interaction in this very old-fashioned way of presenting things. I'm also very much aware that with an audience of teachers, saying that I was once a minister is not curriculum, it's criminal record, but I will try to forget that part of my life and really focus on the topic that we have today. I'm very honored with this invitation because I've been a big fan of eTwinning for many, many years. I know that I'm a teacher myself, and I know that our profession can be very isolated. Sometimes we are in our classroom with our students, and we don't have the option or the time or the freedom to cooperate with others. But we make the education system accelerate when we have the opportunity to exchange practices, to learn from our peers, to learn from other countries, and this is what eTwinning is about. I was thrilled yesterday with hearing the panels and learning about the projects with the little book we have in our bags with all the examples of things that are happening all over Europe and in other countries. And this is, so we need another 20 and 40 and 60 and 80 years of eTwinning. We need to continue this journey because, as you said, this is about hope. And I'm a son of Erasmus and also a father because I was one of the first Erasmus students in my time. I had the opportunity to move from Portugal to the Netherlands. It changed my life because then I stayed for another 4 years there. My son was an Erasmus student, and it's definitely the best result of the European Union. And the fact that eTwinning is under Erasmus, the fact that our agency, ISNI, is under Erasmus, is all the good signs of and the good results of this initiative. What I'm going to do this afternoon is, as was announced, to focus on inclusive education, but not taking inclusive education as a separate box. Because when we put inclusive education as a separate box, we are contradicting the spirit of inclusiveness. We're saying that inclusion is this person's responsibility, and then we have someone who's in charge of mathematics and another one who's in charge of citizenship. And if we don't glue everything together, we will be failing in all the dimensions, even in mathematics, even in citizenship, even in inclusion. And again, it's so easy to have exclusive systems. It's so easy to say to a student, you didn't study enough, so please leave. And we still have high rates of grade repetition. We still have, in some countries, high grades of early dropout of school. And the easiest task is to expect the student to be formatted and to adhere to whatever I have to offer. What is really hard, and I don't have to say this because I'm talking to teachers, what is really hard is to take in those students that don't have any conditions to learn or preconditions to learn and make them happy, because we are able to see this sparking light when they finally grasp what we are trying to teach to them. So inclusion is difficult, it's hard, it needs resources, it needs a mental state, which is something that you don't write in the law, but above all, it needs cooperation. And again, eTwinning is a great opportunity for making our education systems more and more inclusive. I always like to start by asking you to imagine the following. If you close your eyes for 2 seconds, and then you open your eyes, and everyone had exactly the same face in this room. Suppose you opened your eyes and everyone had my face. It would be a nightmare, I know, I'm aware of it. But what I'd like us to be aware of is that what is normal is that we are different. Diversity is the rule, is not the exception. Diversity is not a problem, it's what we are. And for centuries, I would say, we policymakers designed education systems with the wrong premise, assuming that in front of us we have a homogeneous class, and that there is one student who is different. But the reality is the contrary. What is normal is that when we face our class, we see a set of individuals with their specific stories, with their specific background, with their specific needs. The only time I had 2 students that looked the same, it's because I had 2 identical twins in my classroom, and I never knew which one was which one. But they got very irritated because I took them as a pair and not as 2 different individuals. So every class I asked, which one are you? And so let's put ourselves in this state of mind in which we are assuming that diversity is the normal. And when we understand this, we understand that even the concept that it's the name of our agency, the concept of special needs maybe doesn't make much sense, because we all have special needs. And in different days, we have special needs. If I didn't sleep well last night, I have a very specific need for coffee today that I didn't have yesterday. And sometimes this happens with our students. They are undergoing some stress at home, or they are being victims of bullying in their school. And so we see, as you were saying, that it's very difficult to talk about citizenship, inclusion, skills for life, without talking about well-being. But well-being is about being part, feeling part of where we are. So it is about being in the city, being part of a community. So all these things glue together. And that will be the main point of my presentation. So I will try to go through those 4 items. One is to agree with you on the context we are living in. We don't do education in abstract. We educate learners in a very concrete space and dimension and time. And when we ignore this, when we develop a curriculum or when we develop a relationship we establish with our students and we forget the context, it will be much harder to achieve and to make them have success and achieve. So I will show some of the implications of this context. Then I will dive into inclusive education, revisiting some of the key principles, sharing with you what is our vision at ISNI, at the European Agency, what are the challenges that countries face, just to tell you a bit about who we are. We are an independent agency. We work with 31 member countries, so beyond the European Union. We always say we work for them and with them on assisting in policy development, in producing resources, both at the policy level system, but also aiming at reaching practitioners, families, learners, and doing some advocacy for the cause of inclusive education. So I will revisit some concepts, some principles, but most of all, I'd like to share with you the challenges and some of our key recommendations for implementation. And why am I talking about implementation? Because it is more or less easy to agree on the values. It is more or less easy to agree on the principles. But then, as you know better than me, making it happen, that's when things get tough. And so I will share with you some of the recommendations that follow from the work we do to make it happen. And again, I think we know how it can happen the more you share your successful practices. The more we know, sometimes I remember this experience being in Portugal or being from Portugal. We know that one of the groups that is most vulnerable to exclusion these days is the children from the Roma communities. And sometimes teachers are struggling with big problems. And then we had an Erasmus exchange with teachers from Romania, in which this is old news. And the Portuguese teachers learned a lot from the Romanian experience. Things that appear to be unsolvable were already solved there. But they also had their challenges. So the more we cooperate, the faster we move and the more we grow. And again, thanks to eTwinning, we are learning a lot from each other. And then I'll go to the topic of this conference, citizenship education. What does this have to do with the context and with inclusion? And finally, I will ask all of you to cooperate with us and volunteer myself to cooperate with you, because this is about a collective action and a collective call for responsibility. So let's start with the context. And in a project I'm sharing, not at the agency, but at OECD, which is called the Future of Education and Skills 2040, we adopted this acronym VUCA to name this context in which we are teaching and where students are learning right now. We live times of big volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, and we can get several examples that show exactly where these words come from. The best example we have was until 2020, or in January 2020, many of us were so certain about where education was heading, what worked in education. And then an invisible virus, a small animal, turned upside down everything we knew about education. And we had to reinvent ourselves. We became aware of many problems that were already there in the system but were not so visible. We all became experts on Zoom and Teams and trying to establish a connection with the students, always feeling that we were not doing enough because we didn't know how to do. So we were full of doubts. We all did our best. Teachers were amazing during that period, really incredible, but we didn't know. We were finding new things every day. We have financial instability. We have learners who have to learn in the context of war and conflict. In this project, we work a lot with teachers from Ukraine who have been teaching us on how to keep well-being and learning when the students have to be hiding in places where the bombs don't reach them. And we have these videos and testimonials in which we see happy children there, which is very impressive. But again, these teachers didn't know how to do it before February 2022. We have climate change. We have, I was visiting some schools in Tanzania last year, and they don't know what the temperature will be like next year. And students still have to go to school and still have to learn in these very extreme environments. And of course, we have this crazy world of technology that really is really shaking all our convictions about learning and teaching. I grew up knowing that my teacher was my biggest source of information, and sometimes the only source of information. I was once having dinner with my family, and this was some 15 years ago, and one of my sons asked me the name of a king or the brother of a king. I don't remember the question. And, you know, I did the usual thing. Google, checked my sources 2 or 3 times, said the name was, and then I put it back in my pocket. And then I said, you know, those things that kids start rolling their eyes. You know, when I was your age, and then they start rolling their eyes. But then I thought, if I had the same question at home with my parents, what would happen? Nothing. No one would stand up to look for an encyclopedia. Maybe the encyclopedia didn't have this information, and I had books at home. So I was privileged in that way. If I still wanted to know, the next day I could ask my teacher. If the teacher didn't know, he would send me to the library. But would this happen? And at the same time, I don't even remember what the question was. So we have lots of information available, but this makes information very easily disposable because we know that we can go back there, but we still need to know what is the information we need to have even when we don't have battery or Wi-Fi. And this is very challenging. This is very, very challenging. And we're getting loads of information, but we're getting loads of misinformation. We're getting an avalanche of fake news. We get an avalanche of radicalism through our screens. And this completely changes what learning and teaching is about. Now, all this has impacts on curriculum design. I will talk about this in a minute. Impact about infrastructure. What is building a school these days? What is the kind of space we need, even from at the classroom level, but even when we think of these climate change things, how do we guarantee well-being when the temperatures are going up dramatically in some countries, when it doesn't rain in other parts of the world? How do we monitor all these? What kind of human resources do we need in school? In a school, and jumping a bit ahead, but in a school that wants to be inclusive, the human resources we need are different from a school that says, well, you're not able to learn, bye, go away. It's completely different. Right now, it's unthinkable that we don't have psychologists in school. But when most of us were little, maybe there was no psychologist in school because no one cared about well-being. It was not a problem of the education system. It was a problem to be solved elsewhere, or not to be solved at all, and we gave up on those students. And monitoring is a big issue because things are accelerating so fast. This change, this uncertainty is so fast these days. Everything is moving so fast, and we need time. Education needs time. We are inherently, for good and for bad, we are inherently slow. I myself, as a teacher at university, I have to be convinced that the way I taught for the last 10 years is not working. But then the world is moving, and my students are using technology in a different way, and I have to be creative. I need to know what to do. Last year, when I went back to my university, my colleagues were telling me, you know, now all the students are using ChatGPT to do their essays, and we don't know when they did it or when ChatGPT did it for them. And I said, okay, what am I going to do with this? So first class, I said, you're going to do an assignment. It was something on pronouns, I'm a linguist. And I told them, do it on ChatGPT. And they looked at me like, this guy is crazy. They said, now your task is to find out what ChatGPT did wrong. And they worked so hard. They worked so hard, and they learned much more. But I could just stay nagging about the fact that students use ChatGPT or pretending that they are not going to use it or to adapt. But we don't have time for this, so we have to be very creative on the monitoring policies that we design. We both at ISNI, but this also follows for some of the work that we did at OECD. We brought countries together to identify the country top priorities, the burning issues that are in which we need more evidence. It's not things that we already know or that we are worried about, but areas where we need more research. And surprisingly for me, one of the topics that emerged was the socioeconomic benefits of education. We see in some countries a speech emerging saying, we only need skilled people, we don't need academic qualification. And this is dangerous. I will show you some examples of why this is dangerous. Equity and inclusion, I will spend more time with this. Your topic last year, well-being. We know now that it's not enough to guarantee that students know things. They have to develop a whole array of social-emotional skills that are not innate, that we learn to develop. And this is very, very interesting. I will also probably go back to this. But when we look, for instance, at PISA, the PISA results, OECD goes by trends. For some time, it was Finland. Finland was the mecca of education. I don't know if there are Finnish teachers here. So everyone went to Finland to see what was happening there. Then for some years, they told to look at Portugal because our results are bad, but we went up very quickly. Now it's the South Asian countries, so Singapore, Japan, they are top performers. But PISA has 3 volumes of data, and psychological well-being is also there. And when we see where these countries are in psychological well-being, we worry because they are top performers in literacy, mathematics, and science, but they are very, very low in what concerns anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation. And then we ask, is this what I want for this young population? But then we can see other countries. For instance, here closer to us, we have Albania. It's one of the lowest performing countries, but they are on top of the scale in well-being. And then we wonder, do we have to choose? Either I know mathematics or I'm happy. But then we have other examples. We have, for instance, Denmark. It's just because you gave me the candies before. Denmark is a top-performing country, both in cognitive and in well-being. So it is possible to achieve all of these, and they don't necessarily go hand in hand. They must, but they do not necessarily go hand in hand. I already mentioned all that has to do with digitalization. The lifelong cycle education does not stop when we finish, when we graduate. Because of this very fast change, we need to, and this is an old concept for us who work in education, but learning to learn is very, very important so that we are skilled and we are equipped with the skills for the rest of our life. We need to know more, and we need the connections with the neuroscientists on how this young generation is learning. Their brain is not working the same way our brains worked when we were children, because they live in a world of hyperstimulation. We are all living in this world. Many of you right now are looking at your phone, and please continue looking at your phone, because we developed these skills to work in stereo. We can do several things at the same time. But those kids that sit in our class, they were born like that. And we say, oh, we need to teach them the technical things. No, it's not really the technical things. It's what you do with that. I have a niece, she was 1 year old. I showed her a picture, a photo in paper. There are still photos in paper. And she grabbed it, she was 1 year old, and she did like this in the photo. And I said, wow, there's a chip that they get in. So it's not really the gesture, it's how we manage this information. And this has implications in the neural connections that we have, and we need to know more because we need to adapt the methodologies to the way those little humans are learning these days. A big topic right now, unfortunately, is the topic of financial efficiency, because there is money going to security, money going to defense. We need to know what works, what is effective. Again, your testimonies from eTwinning, when I heard yesterday your testimonies in the panel saying, this worked, this is how we worked, these are lessons that all the countries have to have, even at the policy level, to support the most effective practices. And of course, the role of innovation, I will go back to this, not as a goal. Innovation is not a goal. Innovation is always a tool. And as I will try to demonstrate, it is a tool for inclusion, for instance. It is a tool for better learning. So with all this, let me jump into my favorite thing, inclusive education. Let me first try to make us all agree on about what we're talking about when we talk about inclusion, and then review these challenges and recommendations. I always like this image because it helps us define what we are talking about. And many times where we get confused is in this difference between integration and inclusion. This is a bit the history of many of our countries. If we go back 1 century, all those who had some kind of difficulty were just left behind, and they were not considered. They stayed at home. They didn't have access to anything. Then the first step, and we can take the example of disability. The first step was to create special settings. In many countries, we still have them, special schools. And it was a very good step because we started giving provision to learners with disabilities that were just left out of all education. Then, in many places, we took the next step, which was to bring them to mainstream schools. But this does not mean that they are included. It's like I get in a school, I visit a school and I ask, where is inclusive education here? And they tell me, oh, it's the second corridor on the right. They are there, but they are not fully participating with their peers. And we are talking about full inclusion when all learners are sharing the same space, the same opportunities, and they are learning from each other. I always tell this story, if anyone has already heard it. I'm a bit like João Marques when I said, I don't know if I said it, but I like to hear me saying it again. My best lesson on the difference between integration and inclusion was in a school visit. I learned it from visiting a school. In Portugal, we have this one day in which we simulate an earthquake so that kids learn the safety rules and the protection rules. And by sheer coincidence, I visited a school, 2 second grade classes. In both of them, there was a kid in a wheelchair. In one of the classes, when the bell rang, it was the earthquake, there was an adult that grabbed the wheelchair, turned it, and he was watching the others perform the safety rules. In the other one, there was a little one who ran, grabbed his friend from the wheelchair, dragged him to under the table, and protected him. This one was included, the other one was integrated. And it's a very beautiful story because it shows what inclusion is about. This class had more work. They had more work. They needed to decide how to do it, who was going to be responsible, but they all learned. In this class, this is for those who are worrying about financial efficiency, there was even an extra adult that was not in that class. They used the peers. But the whole class here developed social-emotional skills. They developed a sense of solidarity, and they understood that the earthquake affects everyone. In that class, I asked the other ones, poor ones, they were 7 years old, I said, what happened to him? And I said, and to me, because I didn't go under the table. And one of them looked at the other one and said, how he's not a part of the group for this. And that's what exclusion is about, is when someone tells us that we are not part of a group for something. So the two key concepts when we're talking about inclusive education are these two: belongingness, being a part, and well-being. When we belong, we feel well. When we feel like a strange body in a room, imagine that I work in quantum physics, and all of a sudden I get in this room and I sit and I look around. Who are these people? What are they talking about? Or if I would sit in a quantum physics conference, I wouldn't feel well there because I was not belonging there. I couldn't understand what was going on there. And there are so many reasons for us not to belong. If I don't understand the language that is being spoken around me, I feel like a stranger. If I'm being bullied by my peers, I don't want to be there. If I have some physical disability and I find these horrible stairs and there is no elevator to get me to the other floor, I feel I don't belong there. So it's always about rights, the right to feel well, the right to belong. We are talking about inclusive education when we are at the intersection of these three key ideas. Of course, granting access, providing equity, and again, we know the difference between equality and equity. Equality is what we aim for, but for this we need to have different responses according to different needs. It is, as I just said, about participation and belonging, but it is also about achievement. It is about believing that all of us have the capacity to learn and develop, no matter what our starting conditions are. And this has, as I said, has consequences on everything. It has consequences on how we teach, it has consequences on how we design the curriculum, it has consequences on how we assess the students. I was approached by a neighbor of mine, she was 12 at the time, and she said, I wanted to ask you a question. In our class, she was in 7th grade, in our class we have a friend, he's with us since 1st grade, and he never had a good mark. And now the teacher of history, I knew this other child, he had a language development issue with some comprehension issues. He had no other cognitive problem. Our teacher in the test she gave us, in his test she explained the questions a little better. And for the first time he had a good mark. And our parents, it wasn't them, our parents think this is not fair. And I looked at her and I said, how am I going to explain this to a 12-year-old, that this kid just has a comprehension problem? He knows history. It's understanding the questions, what is at stake. So, as maybe you saw, I have to walk with a stick because I have a problem in my foot. So I told her, okay, let's run, the two of us. Let's do a race till the end of the street. And she looked at me like this, and she said, why? And I said, no, let's do a race and see who wins. And then she looks again at me, and I asked her, who is going to win? And she says, I will, because you have a problem walking. And I said, so what's the point of doing this race in which we are trying to reach with the same means, exactly the same goal? And she said, I got it. I will try to explain it to my mother. I don't know if she was successful in this. What are the main characteristics of inclusive education models? First, they are preventative. We work as early as possible. And that's why preschool, early childcare education is so important. And I will come back to this. We heard Susana yesterday, I'm praising the Portuguese, talking about preschool. We have so much to learn from preschool when we're talking about inclusion. I taught at the university didactics of language for 20 years for prospective high school teachers, and I always told them, you have to visit classrooms in kindergarten for you to become a good high school educator. Why? Because there So I will anticipate. There we see everything we are discussing for the older ones. We see kids moving around freely, working in projects, integrating what happens in the outside, in the classroom, working with groups, working informally, planning their day, evaluating what happened, and surprise, they learn, they don't fail. And they also develop social-emotional skills. So let's all go to the kindergarten and learn what being a teacher is about. I've told this to some of my colleagues, professors at the university. Of course, they didn't care about what I was saying, but okay. So it's about prevention. Inclusion is about prevention, working as early as possible, and not about remediation, not coming when things already went wrong. There are also models that are non-referential. What does this mean? I can have a kid who comes with a label saying, with a diagnosis for autism, but it can be completely different from another one with the same diagnosis. And one without a diagnosis can have similar features. And the rule, as diversity is the rule is also intersectionality. So if I have a diagnosis of autism, but on top of that, I'm an immigrant child who doesn't speak the language, I have two conditions that are affecting my learning. If we know that there are gaps between boys and girls in learning, so if I'm a migrant and I'm a boy or a girl, I can have additional needs. So each case is a case. And when I work in referential models, they tend to exclude. Why? Because I predefine, these are the measures for autistic children. And I apply them the measures, the standardized measures, independently of what they need. So it is about each learner, it is about individual needs. It is a multi-level approach. I start with prevention, I start working for everyone, and then I start specifying according to the more specific needs. It's a multidisciplinary work. Teachers cannot be alone. Everything is not on the shoulders of teachers. I will come back to this. And related to this, it involves partnerships, but above all, it has to be a whole school approach. If the school library, if the school sports, if all the teachers are not committed to inclusion, this will be the task of the support teachers, and they do not perform miracles. They have to work with the other teachers, otherwise the system will fail. And I don't have time to go into this, but there is a big topic, a big emerging topic, which is the transitions. Transitions to after school and transitions in between stages of education. So for instance, from primary school to middle school, it's an area in which students feel lost, and those who are vulnerable to exclusion feel even more lost. So our ultimate position is that this is about all, and all means all. So when we're talking about inclusive education, we are not just talking about disability, we are not just talking about victims of bullying, we are not just talking about migrants or refugees, we are not only talking about learners who are struggling to assume their sexual orientation and they are victims of bullying. We are talking about all of them. And it's a rights-based approach. So it's not a favor we are doing to these children. It's once we opened our education systems to all, we have to provide education for them. And we have to let them learn alongside with their peers. Because if I am in a separate room, I'm not being included. The good news is that this is good for everyone. Of course, it is good for the learners who are vulnerable to exclusion because they learn more, they develop social skills, they get used from the very beginning to be together with the others, so they feel better. As I said before, it's good for their peers. We are talking about social and emotional skills, so when you have someone who is considered to be a problem by others, but then is next to you and you see that it's not a problem, you develop skills of collaboration, empathy, you develop this inclusive mindset. We are training citizens, and we see now the connection with citizenship, we are training citizens to be actively engaged in the future in building an inclusive society, in building democracy, because it's very difficult to talk about democracy without talking about the history of inclusion. Every time we include a new group, we are strengthening democracy. Every time we identify a group as saying, those are to blame for whatever, or those should not be here, we are weakening the quality of our democracies. So when we have inclusive schools, we have schools for democracy. We are building democratic citizens for the future. And if anyone ever wants to become a Minister of Education, my strongest advice is try to find a government in which there is no Minister of Finances. Your life will be much better. But if you have to talk with your Minister of Finances, the good news is also that inclusion is more cost efficient than building a whole set of segregated schools. So kids learn better, we have better schools, and we may even be more cost efficient. Now, we've been talking about learning. We want everyone to learn. We want everyone to have access, to participate, to belong, and to achieve. And that prompts the question, okay, but learning what? What are we talking about success when we're talking about success? And we tend just to look at statistics, but statistics don't say anything. If I have my students all with top marks, but they didn't learn anything relevant or meaningful, then I'm not preparing skills for life. I'm preparing skills for the day of the exam. And the kid is happy, the parents are happy, but the next day it goes back to zero. So this imposes curriculum challenges, and the big reflection on curriculum. I bring you here the example from Portugal when we decided to ask ourselves, what are we talking about when we're talking about success? And we identified these 10 core competencies in the national curriculum, and then we see how difficult it is, because we want school to do what it always has done. We want it. It's the place where we learn geography and arts and mathematics and philosophy, but we want the school to do even more. We want the school to develop creative thinking. We want the school to develop, as we heard yesterday in Louisa's keynote, critical thinking. We want the school to develop social-emotional skills like autonomy, personal development, interpersonal relationship. But we are only for 12 years in school and only 6 hours per day. So we have to see how do we do all this. And this is about the how. And the examples that were shared yesterday really show that we need to learn from you on the how. Because in the projects that were presented, in the projects that are in the booklet, we see the content, but we see the other skills being presented. The project from Slovakia and the other country, Romania, on the memory of the Holocaust is a very good example. Those students are learning history, but they are learning critical thinking, they are learning solidarity, they are learning what to do with the memory. So they're learning better. And this is very, very challenging. But it solves a clash that exists. We have this clash between what traditionally is considered a good student and what then the society wants from those people who come out of school. If I would ask my grandmother, if she was still alive, what is a good student? She would tell me, well, a good student is someone who sits very quietly, who is very good at repeating what the teacher taught, and is the best in his class. So it's very competitive. Then what does the world expect from us? We then are recruiting someone to work with us, and we want someone who's very good in communicating, proactive, finding new solutions to old problems, or to new problems, sorry, and is able to work in teams. So he's not just worried about being the best. So there is an obvious clash. So when also at this project I mentioned, the Future of Education Skills 2040, we have been working with 48 countries in a reflection about the curriculum we want. Not to have a global curriculum, curriculums are national, but to say, what are we talking about when we're talking about the curriculum? And we're talking about knowledge, of course, skills, but also attitudes and values. And these discussions are very difficult, but the starting point of this project, it's now 11-year-old project, was a very challenging one. Many times, and in the introduction you were mentioning this, many times we designed the curriculum for what's out there. Say, oh, there's this digital technology, so we have to prepare the students for this. In this project, we started by asking ourselves, what is the future we want? And then we started designing the curriculum to respond to a better future, rather than just responding to the problems that we know that already exist. Now, we are at that side right now. We realize, okay, so if we define this compass for learning, we need to know how we can assist the teachers to do this. So we are working on this teaching compass. Because, and I think of myself as well as a teacher, it was so much easier in the past. It was so much easier when there was not a commitment with inclusion. It was so much easier when the students did not have access to anything, so they could not confront what I was teaching with their phone. I was always right, and now I can be wrong. So we need to know how to support the teachers in these new demands. And this is difficult. This is difficult to define what is exactly the type of support. For instance, let me go back to the example of the pandemic. We all commented on what the students were going through, that they were isolated, that they were not able to communicate with their peers, but the adults were in exactly the same condition. We were afraid that our parents were going to die because of the pandemic, and we didn't care enough. We were so worried about the students that we forgot to look after the adults. I'm speaking against myself. So this is where we are right now. It's also an area in which I think you can provide the Commission, the EU, with evidence of what is needed so that better learning can be supported by better teaching, and better teacher can be supported by measures and tools. We at ISNI develop a lot of toolkits to support practitioners, tools to help you design these learning opportunities. Now, my last point is about citizenship education. What does citizenship education have to do with all of this? I'm a linguist. I like to play with words. And if we bring the two words together, citizenship and inclusion, citizenship has the word city in it. And when we think of the old cities, especially in Europe, our old cities were built within walls. We had walls. So being included is being inside the walls, inside the city. So there is no inclusive education without citizenship. And citizenship education is that place in the curriculum. It's also a whole school approach. There is no citizenship education if it's just done 1 hour per week, if it's not coherent. I cannot teach about sustainability of the planet and then my students don't have any place in the school where to separate the garbage. I cannot talk about water supply and then not having a place where they can fill in their little bottles rather than just buying plastic bottles all day. So citizenship education is about being part, and we saw that belongingness is the key ingredient of inclusion, but it is also about coherence. And I go back to this whole school approach to inclusion and to citizenship. And I know, and I had that experience myself, that this is an area of the curriculum that every now and then is under attack. And in many countries we have experienced this. They say, that's not the role of the school. The school is for and I'm glad that the European Union, the European Commission included citizenship skills in the basic skills, because what we hear many times is school is for language, mathematics, science, and then some other things every now and then. And citizenship is for the family. There's a difference between instruction and education. Education is for the family, instruction is for the school. Now, it's so easy to show that this is not the case. I often give the example of the terrible thing of home violence. If a child grows up in a family where he witnesses the father attacking, beating up his mother, he's going to grow up thinking that this is normal, that this is acceptable. And maybe as an adult, he will replicate this. What is the best hope for breaking this cycle? Education, school, citizenship education. And that child who grew up in a context of violence will not feel well at school. So he's vulnerable to exclusion. And through citizenship education, he will have another view of the world. He will see that there's a different way to interact with the others. And therefore, he will feel better and he will learn better. That's why the two things, in my view, cannot be teased apart. We cannot talk about inclusive education without talking about citizenship education, and vice versa. The same holds the other way. And we need to know that we are in a context of polarization. There's new radicalisms appearing. People are nervous. It's black or white. There are no gray areas in the public speech. And young people are very vulnerable to this. Polarization appears in their screens. They see fake news. They see quests for radical movements. We also, well, not we all, but many of you have seen on Netflix this show, Adolescence. And we saw what that kid was exposed to, this incel movement that is growing everywhere and also in Europe. And so we need to give, and I go back to Louisa's talk yesterday, we need to give these young citizens the tools to get rid of that, to get rid of this polarization. And school is about complexity. Education is about complexity. The polarization movements, the populist movements grow on simplifying what is complex. So that's why we go to school. We go to school to know that when it's raining in Brussels, it's not because the clouds are crying. There are chemical things going on. So we go to school also to learn that social interactions, human rights, are complex by nature. And when we dive into complexity, we are building more inclusive contexts and better opportunities for everyone. And for this, we need evidence. We need evidence, and also school is the place of information, of quality data. And why do we need evidence so urgently? We need evidence very urgently because those radical movements like to work on the basis of perceptions. There's a book I recommend that everyone reads. It's called The Danger of Perceptions by Bobby Duffy. He's a researcher that compares what people think that is happening in their country with what really happens. And it's very impressive because sometimes he confronts people with the reality and they say, yeah, but I still believe that. School is where we are not talking about beliefs, we are talking about science, data, clear evidence, and this is also about citizenship education. So what we learn in science, what we learn in history with your project is what feeds our knowledge and contradicts fake perceptions that are emerging. This is the graph I wanted to show you, and this comes from the OECD report, Education at a Glance, and it's like you to focus on that, on the right-hand side, your right-hand side part of the screen. What Education at a Glance shows is a very positive correlation between qualifications and quality of democracies. The more we study, the less vulnerable we are to conspiracy theories, the more likely we are to participate in elections, the more likely we are to participate in demonstrations, to engage in volunteering practices. So education pays off, education compensates, and education guarantees the quality of democracies in a context of erosion of democratic values, of downsliding of democratic values. So yes, there is hope if we do our job. All in all, what I'm trying to say is that we need to think together, that eTwinning is a great platform for us to think together, and we have to think of inclusive in this, integrating this global thinking. Not only global in the sense that we are working together, but also that we have to think of resources, we have to think of curriculum, we have to think of methodologies of teaching, we have to think of going back to the kindergarten, we have to think of all of this together. I will not have the time to do everything I wanted, but I will just mention some of the challenges and some of the recommendations with your tolerance for another 3 minutes. We know that one of the biggest problems across the world is retaining teachers. In some countries, recruiting new teachers, in others, retaining them. The one detail I want to focus on is teachers report that they are not, in tallies, in the Teacher and Learning International Survey, report that they don't feel prepared for diversity. And this creates frustration, and many people leave the profession because of this. Now, recommendation, universities, schools that prepare teachers, prepare them for real life. Prepare them for the naturality of diversity. We cannot prepare prospective teachers as if we were preparing doctors to go to the hospital and only finding healthy patients. That doesn't exist. Second challenge, the models of financing. They have to follow the multi-level model of working. We have to put more money on prevention, and normally what we do, because we don't work enough on prevention, we end up putting more money on remediation, and then there's no money left for prevention. This is difficult. Another recommendation that we make is that we work on single legislative frameworks. This is also difficult, that when we define the curriculum, we define the inclusive education. When we are preparing teacher training, we include inclusive measures in the teacher preparedness. When we are working on evaluation and assessment and formative assessment, that we know that formative assessment is the best tool for inclusive education. Use evidence, not perceptions. These are just the covers of some of our reports. You can visit our website. I invite you to do that. And also to reach out to us at Disney and say, we teachers need you to work on this. Stop working on that stuff you're doing. Here are ideas of things that we need, and we will embrace your ideas, probably partner with eTwinning and see what we can do together. The toughest nut to crack, cross-sectoral collaboration. You teachers get all the problems every day in school, but the problems the kids bring in their backpack come from housing policies, from health domain, from problems of the work conditions of their parents. And we put very nice things in the legislation that all sectors have to work together, but then they don't work. So enhancing cross-sectoral collaboration is one of the key areas in which we are working on with the countries right now. And of course, as I said, linking all this together, seeing what are the benefits that we can have. If I have 30 languages being spoken in my school because there are so many immigrant children, let's use this as an asset. I visited one school in Lisbon where the Portuguese kids welcomed me in the languages of their peers. They were learning Pashto and Bengali and Nepalese, and they were so happy about it. They were all learning to be better citizens. The technology, I now have a hobby. When I'm sitting in the bus, I ask ChatGPT things like, prepare a 50-minute lesson for a class in which there is one child with autism. He has to learn simple equations. He's 11-year-old, he loves dinosaurs, and he has to work at the same time the others are doing other things. And then I have a lesson plan. I have to review it, but it saves me lots of time. So we have to see where technology can help us. And so we are also trying to invest on this link between artificial intelligence and inclusive education. And I will end here. We don't have better citizenship. We don't have a better society. We don't have inclusive education if we don't build societal consensus. And for this, we need to show from your practices, from your schools, that this is possible, this is feasible, this is already happening. This is what I witnessed yesterday. You are already doing it. We have to have positive narratives. Bad news hit the news very easily. If there is a problem in your school, it will be in the front page of the newspaper. Unfortunately, your projects are not in the front page of the newspaper, and that's why what you're doing at eTwinning in sharing all these positive stories is so important. It's difficult, so we have to dialogue, we have to cooperate, we have to work together. But, and I will really finish here, we also have to learn from history. Let's go again back to history. Sometimes it seems impossible. But let me just give two examples. I'm left-handed. The generation before mine was corrected. And we were seen as a problem. We were justifying time-consuming operations by the teachers to force the left-handed to write with the right hand. There were handbooks on how to correct the left-handed. We didn't fit in. It looks so absurd now, because at some point someone said, it's okay to be different. It's okay to write with the left hand. Another example, in many countries, more than 100 years ago, and in others less, and in some still, women could not vote. What were the reasons? Exactly the same reasons for segregation. They didn't have the same capacities, the system was not ready, we didn't have the time to prepare. Until some women came out on the street and said, we can vote. And now we don't, hopefully, we don't question it anymore. So inclusion is possible if it goes hand in hand with democracy, if we take diversity as normal, and if we question ourselves every day, what can I do? What can we do together? How we can cooperate, how we can use platforms as eTwinning to make this happen every day. Thank you so much for your attention. This is a paradigm shift, and so we have to work together. Count on us, and do reach out to us in whatever way you think our agency can help you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, João. To listen for hours, and I'm really sorry I had to stop you, but really, it's been more than an hour, and it looked like 5 minutes.
Oh my God, I went over time.
No, but it was really great. Thank you. And I think the word paradigm is actually a key one. Is a change of paradigm, and it doesn't take a day, but is a good. And you are the agents of change in this paradigm. I think we all are, but teachers, I think, are the agents of change. There were a couple of questions, but I really don't have the time, so maybe next time, and thank you again. Hope until the next conference, this time 2 hours, and then thank you all, and see you at dinner, 7:30. You know, it's written in the program, so you're most welcome to come.
I will be around for dinner if there are questions.
Wonderful. I didn't dare to ask you, but yes, thank you for saying this. So thank you all, and see you online. Bye.